gosh, I'm so sorry. I was getting ready here. I had everything set up, I thought, and it turns out that in preparing to do a cupping for you today of our new Mexico Oaxaca, I actually had forgotten one thing that's kind of important when doing a cupping, which is my cupping spoons. And even though I have my new lovely setup here in our OTR, or tasting room, which is closed to the public, I can't go into the lab, which is where the spoons were. So everything's really segregated here as it needs to be by workflow, so that we have the most clean and clear process in our food production facility. I'm not allowed to go into the roastery or the lab. I have kind of the run of this space, and as you can see, usually even when I'm in here by myself, I keep my mask on because other people do come in at different times of the day. But no, I didn't have my spoons, so I apologize for being a little bit late there. So what are we doing today? Well, today we are going to look at this new, it's always hard to say, New Mexico that we have. No, not from New Mexico, the state, of course, but from our friends in Oaxaca, which is where the coffee comes from. One thing that's kind of nice that I get to do now, which I don't usually get to do, is we're going to run through kind of the steps you never got to see when I was working out of my home. So that begins with us doing our scooping directly into the cups, right? And this is how it's done in the lab, right? Measure out the coffee. Now, often we might do it by weight. I was doing it by weight at home, but I'm using one of these kind of standardized scoops here. And then we go through the process of grinding the coffee as well. It's something which I have access now in this space that I never had access to, right, when I was working out of my house. So, still have a few bugs here. Here we go. Make sure I don't pull that entirely off. So I hope you're all doing well. I know a lot of us last night was a long night, right? But today is a new day. Hopefully you're at home with the people you love, and you're going to enjoy having a little coffee here, which coffee always makes everything a little better, right? So, especially this new coffee presented from our friends in Oaxaca, New Mexico. So, as you know, when we go through a cupping, what we do to start with is, after we've had it measured and ground, we often will go through this first step, which is let's move this out of the way. Sorry. Put this up here. Where we do just a kind of a fresh sniff or dry sniff. Ooh, man, that is very bright. It appears very bright for me. And if you remember from our cuppings, why do I have 3 of these little samples here? Why are there 3 of them? Well, of course, the reason for that is because we are always attempting to isolate, if we can, anything that might be a defect or an issue with a coffee, or in this case, with coffee that's already gone through all the cupping process. We're trying to make sure that the roast profile has carried across. The way we want to roast this coffee has actually made its way appropriately all the way across this profile. You take a look at the coffee here. We've kind of eased this coffee to this point. Very, for us, very light profile on this roast here. We want to make sure that the coffee has been roasted. Obviously, when we accept it, we cup it to make sure that all the processes that go into creating the coffee are equally represented with every seed. Same thing with after we've roasted it, we want to make sure that it, the way that it roasts is the same for every cup. So we have 3 cups here in order to come up with a sample. So the next thing we do when we are cupping our coffees is we add water to them. And we also start a timer, which I did not. Okay, so let's get a timer pulled up on my computer here. Okay. Boy, Josh just is not prepared today. This is one of the tricks of starting in a new location, is not having everything I always need. I bet we can just pull up the timer here. Yep, there we go. So we're going to use stopwatch it. There we go. Okay. So I have my water here. Start my timer so we can be monitoring it. Making up that crust as a beautiful color. If you haven't tried this coffee yet, I have a link in the show notes there where you can see where to come and get it. Also, we're going to look at in just a moment after we've let this sit for a few minutes. We're going to look over some of the notes for the coffee as well. So the coffee has now begun the actual process of extraction, brewing, just like you would with any other method of making coffee, right? French press, pour over method, Chemex, even espresso, right? The water is in contact with the grounds and it's bringing out those things we want to seek out by making a great cup of coffee. So in this case, the ratio of coffee to water is a little higher in the usual cupping methodology, because again, we're really seeking to get a very kind of concentrated extraction for being able to judge its qualities. Now, often in this phase, we can also do a little bit of a wet sniff just of the coffee. Hat on here so I can get down there. Yeah, fruit is definitely present in that. You notice that we're doing, sorry, don't want to do that to you. Look at that mess of hair of mine. As always, you'll notice whenever we're doing a cupping, the aroma plays a huge part of this. We had a dry sniff, in this case a wet sniff. We're about to, at the mark coming up here, crack the crust of this coffee and capture a huge, kind of bloom of aroma that will come up off of that. That cracking of the crust is really an important step. And again, it's about the aromatics of the coffee. So I pulled up our page because I do want you to look at it. Not the timer. Here is our Mexico, Oaxaca. And as always, I would ask you to, you can go ahead and run to our page and look at it there on your own, but pull up that coffee report. So important to look over these, right? The key thing that I want to communicate about this coffee is that this is from a cooperative, right? And the cooperative is recognizing that we don't have our power plugged in. Oh, Joshua, you were saying, you silly guy. There we go. And the cooperative comprises many families, right? If you look over the report here, we call out that there are 223 members in this group. And when you look at the bag, you see right up here, those letters that are in quotes there, right? So we know it's a Oaxacan coffee, and Sicobi is actually an acronym. And I'm not going to butcher the Spanish because that would be embarrassing. But what the acronym stands for is the community system that takes care of the biodiversity of the region, right? So that means that this is a small group of communities that are working within natural systems in order to produce a coffee that some might call like rustic, but we like to think of it as, these are folks who are working to create natural systems that that take care of the land while also allowing them to have an agronomy product that is superior. And those two things are related, we think, right? So in this case, they're using relatively old techniques for processing coffee. They do have an amazing biodiversity because of that focus that they have within their growing region and because of the ways in which they interact with it. And they also have a full-time agronomist on site there that they work with, so that they always have best practices applied for the way that they're growing their coffee. It's, again, a very traditionally processed coffee. It is done with what we call the wet method, in which the coffee is put in, it's depulped and washed in wooden boxes and tanks, used for what we call the fermentation process for the coffee. And what we end up with, which we can often see within our coffees from Latin America, is this pronounced acidity and a sweetness as well. So I'm going to go back to this last stage here. Don't be afraid. Ooh, boy. My oh my. Well, the coffee is now gone through its process of extracting flavors. A lot of the grounds have naturally settled to the bottom, but there are some at the top that we can just scoop off here. And you'll see that, in between cracking the crust, or in this case, doing this scooping here, actually we rinse the spoon. And again, that is a practice that is carried across all cupping practices, so that we do not, if there is anything in any one of these cups that is, if one of the seeds that's been roasted is not roasted the way we want it to, possibly because of shape or something inherent in the coffee, we don't want to transfer the flavors that result from that between cups. We're trying to isolate any differences that we might experience in these coffees for whatever reason into just the one cup where it's at. And the reason we do that is it's kind of a very simple way to run, for lack of a better term, a statistical analysis of the coffee, right? We know that if something shows up in one of these cups that's a little bit different between them, then we're gonna say, oh well, it showed up in one of the cups. So we'll blow up and we'll do a larger sample and see if we can capture it again. Is it really an anomaly? Is it just one seed among 5,000? It's an agricultural product, and even with all the care that goes into its harvest, into its processing, into sorting that goes on often, there can be some types of defects. Now, hopefully, if they're agricultural defects, that's a different issue. But in this case, if it showed up in 2 of the cups, oh boy, well then we're starting to say, well, it's obviously showing up more often. So that is why we want to make sure that we isolate between the cups as we're tasting the coffee. Now we're a little bit early in the process here, but we usually would wait a good 10 minutes or so total time from when the water was added here, just to let them cool down. But I'm going to move a little bit faster here. Now this is, if you've done the cupping before, you know that this is the fun part, right? You get to slurp it. This is, it seemed when I first smelled it, there was going to be like a kind of a pronounced acidity, but in fact, no. This is for me, definitely like more of a medium body experience, a little bit more prevalent body to acidity. Yeah, and just these qualities of it calls it out on the sheet. It calls it out nougat. It's absolutely, there's a nougat quality there. Lovely kind of sugary quality. Wow. And this is a coffee that would go so well. There's like vanilla and chocolate. I would tend more towards the vanilla, and I think it's because the aromatics for me are so strong. Like the aromatics from it are definitely floral, and I could smell that in the beginning, and that's what I thought maybe to me was telling my brain that there would be an acidity to it, but that's not what it is. It's much more. It's the floral petal quality that I was experiencing that tricked me there. In the mouthfeel though, definitely nice big mouthfeel, and then that makes that floral quality along with those elements become like a vanilla. And you know that if you've ever had fresh vanilla, it's like smelling sweet oil, right? Or similar in the sense for spices for cloves, right? Just that heaviness of that aroma. You can actually, it almost has body in the aroma itself. So lovely vanilla quality there. The chocolate, for me, what I'm experiencing here is actually more like the edges of a brownie quality to it, which is I love. It's that kind of that cooked part, which is interesting because we have such a relatively light roast profile applied here, so it's not bad. It's something inherent to it, and maybe that's that body again interacting with the aroma and the flavor from it. Just makes this lovely, thick, rich quality to it. So, boy, I don't know what that means. I will say that, butterscotch is what someone says right here. Absolutely. I would say that this coffee it's gonna be great in the morning. I've always thought the Mexicos we source are always good for a morning coffee. But wow, this coffee to come along with the dessert in the evening, outstanding. I think that truly would be a great coffee for your after dinner drinking, and what a great way to finish a meal. So, boy, I'm happy I got to be able to do this. Listen, I want to remind you, right over here. Oop, there it is. Save 10% when you use Watch and Learn 10 on our website. Please jump on there, grab some coffee, and it applies to everything. So thank you so much for being with me today. Still working out a few bumps as learn how to use this new space, but I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week